Hi, everybody. My name is Christina, and I work for the Fort Worth Public Library. Every second Saturday, we do the Maker Showcase, where we spotlight a maker in the community. Today, the maker we are spotlighting is Mandy. Welcome, Mandy.
My name is Mandy Engleman, and I'm a graphic designer. I own a graphic design studio with my friend and partner, Becca, and we do graphic design primarily for museums and nonprofit organizations. And we do anything from publications to brochures to flyers to environmental design, exhibition design, environmental graphics, just to pretty much anything that someone needs to communicate visually with someone else is what we do.
Awesome. So a lot of times we're communicating visually and we don't even realize it, but
Yeah.
your work is everywhere, right?
Yeah. We work for a lot of the museums around the Metroplex. So like the Dallas Museum of Art, the Perot Museum of Nature and Science, the Amon Carter Museum, the Meadows Museum at SMU. And then we recently have started working with the National, I'm going to mess this up, the National Aviation Education Center. So it's a kind of a quote unquote museum, not necessarily museum, for the commemorative Air Force at the Dallas Executive Airport. And it's been a really fun project that we've been working on recently.
Wow, interesting. That's a lot of nonprofits. And here in the library, of course, we love our nonprofits. But now that we know who you are and where you are in life right now, let's go back in time.
Sure.
And so let's get in our time machine and tell us about what you studied in school and what you wanted to be when you grew up.
So I've always had, whether or not it took the exact route of graphic design, I've always kind of been a designer at heart. And when I was little, I was always making posters and putting it on my door, or, like some sort of communication, whether it was a poster or something like that. And I just always loved like doing puzzles and having interested with the way that things laid out and things like that. And so I started out when I was in high school. My mom worked for a local newspaper, and she got me a job, or she basically made me work there on the, evenings and weekends. And I just started playing around with the computers, and they had this little 9-inch Mac. This was back in the 90s, early 90s.
I remember those tiny, they had a little screen. It's very boxy.
And so they just let me play around, and I started playing around with like ad layouts and, little things. And then I just started helping them put together the newspaper. And
how old were you at this time?
I was probably 16, 17.
Wow. And you were helping this full-blown company, your mom.
Yeah, well, it was in a small town. I grew up in Northwest Kansas. In a little town called Goodland, population 5,000. Very tiny. I had about 70 people in my graduating class, so it was very tiny.
How many people in your graduating class?
70. Yeah, 70 people. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure nowadays it's probably even less than that, because I think we were about 10 miles from Colorado and about 30 miles from Nebraska. So like kind of up in the corner.
Okay.
And my dad had always traveled when I was when I was a kid. And when it was time to go to college, my dad got transferred to a day job here in Dallas. And so I decided to move with them and went to school it started out East Texas State University in Commerce, Texas. And then usually I think it was about 1 or 2 years into it, they changed their name to Texas A&M Commerce. So Texas A&M Commerce is where my degree is from. And I studied graphic design. And I should also note that I went to community college here for a couple of years prior to that and got my associate's degree while I was getting residency to have in-state tuition. And I studied graphic design. Yeah, so I studied graphic design there. It was at Collin County Community College, which is now called Collin College. And just fell in love with graphic design and art of any form. I love art. Yeah.
So is Now that you've done design for
Mhm.
X number of years now, I don't know your age either, so I won't call you out. But are there any projects that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I would actually say, well, I love a lot of things that I've done throughout my career. The stuff that we've been doing lately, I've just been really proud of. Um, my partner Becca and I, there's a couple of exhibitions that are up. Well, actually, no one just closed, but there's one exhibition that's up at the DMA that we did. It's called Rooted, and we did the exhibition design for that. So we did all of the signage and the labels and the graphics that are in there. And we worked with the exhibition designer on picking out colors and working with the interpretation team for like how things looked and how they flowed and things like that. So we're really proud of how that one turned out. And we had a lot of fun with it. Like when you walk into it, the whole theme of the exhibition is about, but it's like a plant growing in a crack of concrete, so it's like finding beauty within very mundane things. And so it talks about a lot of political and environmental issues, but it's also kind of about artists finding beauty in those. And so when you first walk in, you see this picture of of kind of like I don't know, just like a field of greenery and grass, a really pretty field. And we have it, we're calling it it's like an analog lenticular. So when you look one way, you see this beautiful meadow. When you look the other way, it's contrasted with like the Dallas skyline. And so when you come into the exhibition, you see the meadow. When you leave the exhibition, you see the skyline. So it's kind of this visual trick that plays with your mind.
Well, that sounds really interesting. And I'd be curious to go see that exhibit just to see that play on perspectives. But that kind of leads me to my next question about, are there other people in the maker world that inspire you? Like, to me, that sounds like an inspiring exhibition to go into, and just with your work in general.
Sure. Yeah, I would say, even more so as Instagram has become part of life. There's so many people on Instagram that inspire me every day, like different artists and, other designers. And, I think people almost in other mediums are more inspirational, because you see graphic design all the time. So it's kind of nice to see someone that's sculpting something or someone that's doing something really cool with color. I love to follow people that do like murals and like giant graphics on walls and stuff like that. And that's always very inspiring to me.
Absolutely. I love how in Fort Worth we're seeing more murals in public spaces.
Yeah, that would be a dream someday. When I worked at the Perot, we did, my team did, we were the ones that came up with the idea to put graphics on that big staircase that goes into the museum. And we also were the first, we came up with the idea to put graphics in the elevators, on the inside of the elevators, to make it like one elevator looked like you were underwater, one looked like you were on the surface of the moon, and one was in a jungle, I think. And it was really cool.
I love how you gave those as examples, because it is a good way for us to remember that the stuff that we see can really transform our experience in a place.
Yeah, and we had, like at the Perot, they had these really cool glass elevators, and we wanted to do something cool in them, but we didn't, it was kind of tricky to figure out exactly what. But then we worked with a vendor that had this really cool material like they use on bus windows, to where you can see, people can see in, or you can see out. I don't know what the difference, people can see in and they don't see the graphics, but when you're in the inside, you can see the graphics. And so that was what was cool. Well, that was what made them possible, because when you looked at the elevators from the outside, they just looked like normal glass elevators. But when you were in the inside, you saw these cool graphics. So
that's so playful and fun. I love it.
I know. And we did the floors and the, it was like you were surrounded by it. It was really cool.
Kind of like what you were saying earlier, you took this mundane experience of just walking up the stairs and you transform that into something where you can start to experience whatever you're going to enjoy next in the museum exhibit.
Yeah, exactly. I love thinking outside the box and thinking of new ways to, communicate, or, a new way to make something feel special.
Yeah, are those some of the skills that you would say you would like have in your toolbox for this maker skill of graphic design? Like, what are
Yeah,
some of those tools?
definitely. Like, seeing something and being able to visualize in your mind how you could, make it different, or what you could do to make it special. And I think, things like communication, being able to convince someone to do something, I think is a skill. I don't know whether you would call that sales, or just like, trying, because I think that's what's challenging about being a business owner, is that, you might have an idea, but ultimately they're the client and they, make the decision. But I think trying to influence someone to take a risk, and do something different, I think that is a very special skill to have. And, a lot of times we'll do that by doing a mock-up in the computer and showing them what it could look like so they can visually see it like we see it in our heads. And sometimes that's the way to convince them. Sometimes you convince them by, figuring out how much it'll cost and, convincing them that way. Or sometimes you just, once you've established trust with someone, sometimes they'll just let you, do something crazy and just trust you that it'll turn out the way it turns out.
And have free reign because you're the expert. Yeah, I think we have a book in the library about the art of persuasion. So
Yeah.
that's a great time. That's definitely a handy skill. I was wondering if you had to be basically a mind reader to do graphic design, because you have to know what someone wants.
My partner Becca and I joke about that a lot. Like, if we could have one skill, we wish we could read minds, because you really do sometimes, in order to, when someone's telling you, I just want it to look cool. And it's like, well, yeah, that's great, but
it's hard to articulate what I'm seeing in my mind.
Yeah, or they'll say,
it's never existed before.
Like it, but I don't know why.
And you have to like draw that out of them.
Yeah,
what are these different variables that you can tweak?
Exactly.
That sounds
so
like
a lot of times it's like trying to interpret what we think they mean, and then showing them like 4 or 5 different things, and hopefully one of those kind of hits the mark that they're thinking about. But I mean, other times we miss it and we end up having to do 5 or 6 rounds of, back and forth. So
yeah, it sounds like a tough situation to be in, but it seems like you're taking it in stride and you're able to eventually get to a happy point for you and the clients.
Yeah. And I, like, in my free time, I'm such a nerd. I love to do puzzles, like jigsaw puzzles. And I really, like, I've been doing them ever since COVID is, like, I think when I really got into it. I mean, like, really got into them. I like a lot of them. I think that I've really discovered by doing them, like, how much my skills in graphic design and how much skills that you have putting a puzzle together, how they kind of mesh, because, you're always looking at different color variations to fit, and then trying to figure out which piece goes where by the shape and all that. A lot of times that's what you're doing when you're laying out a poster or a brochure or things like that. You're trying to make things fit in a certain way to make sense, and you kind of see how those intersect.
That's such an interesting comparison. I can see it though. Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, my next question is, do you have any projects that you can like show and tell us about?
Yeah, I was going to show you a couple of brochures or books that we've done. Everything else is on our website, which I'll give you the link that you can share with everyone. But This is a book that we just finished printing a few weeks ago. And this is a catalog for the DMA. And it's for a show that opened this Sunday called Octavio Median, Spirit and Form. And it's like a 108-page book that we did with all of his different pieces. And kind of, it starts out with an essay from the curator, and then it kind of goes into the different works that are in the show and kind of the details about them. But it was oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you take all these different elements and decide how to present them in this
Yeah,
handheld
we
book.
were like, we would start out, they would give us the essay and they gave us the checklist of the exhibition, like all of the different artworks that they wanted to go into it. And then it's just a matter of trying to, puzzle it together until it makes sense visually. And the curator and the publications manager at the DMA were just awesome to work with. And so it was really an easy process because they're so great to work with, kind of the back and forth. And like for the cover, for example, we went through many, many different images and different colors, believe it or not, like background colors. We went through lots of different background colors to come up with what we ended up coming up with.
Well, it turned out beautiful.
Thank you. So we've been designing it since October. We finished it like right around Christmas. And then from Christmas until, a few weeks ago is the printing process. And that's the part that can be, it can be a headache, but it can also be fun. But it's also nerve-wracking because there's lots of things that can go wrong in the printing process and things like that. So, and then this is a book that I did when I was at the DMA. It was for Chagall. It's just a little book. I don't remember how many pages, probably about 50 or 60 pages. But it was a show that one of the curators had put together that it didn't have a publication with it, and they really wanted something. And so I did this when I worked there, and it was sold in the store, and it was a really fun publication because it's just a little book, but it was really fun to do, and there's some interesting things in it. I was trying to look for a spread to show you I thought this was a cool spread because you see him with all of his plates and everything, and then we did little circle cutouts of them on the other side.
That's so clever.
And then this little book, it's just a little, I think it's like 4x6, this little book called The Hummingbird, we did for another art collector for her collection. And she wanted like a kind of a rose pink cover, and it's just very understated cute little book that we did that was fun. So that's just one small area of things that we do, but we also, like I said, we do environmental graphics, we do tons of invitations and lots of printed pieces and environmental graphics.
So someone like you who's a graphic designer, some of your work is tangible and you can keep it on your bookshelf at home, and other things are just out in the world being looked at, being used, and people just get to enjoy it.
Exactly. We take pictures, but that's usually all you end up with is pictures. So hopefully you get some good pictures while it's up.
Yeah. So how would someone else get started in graphic design? Like if there are any kids or teenagers watching, or even adults, what would you recommend that they do to get started?
I recommend, like finding a mentor, like someone that is in the profession that you can, mentor or that can mentor you. Or just maybe, asking if you can do a tour of if there's a place that you really like, or once you're in school, I would recommend doing an internship just because that is probably the best way to get experience and to learn and to discover new things. And then, just, I would say, YouTube, there's great videos on YouTube, or like Skillshare, where you can see tutorials and you can see how people work. So that might be a great way to see if you would like it.
Yeah, we're so lucky now in this day and age of technology,
Yes.
right? To have so many access points.
Oh my gosh, if I had this when I was in school, it was just a whole new world, because when I was in school, there was barely even email. So now it's like, I remember like some of my last years in schools, and a professor put some things up on the internet and we were like, oh my gosh, the internet. Like I said, late 90s. So
okay, my last question is, do you have any words of wisdom to share with the future generation of makers?
I would say not taking yourself too seriously. I would give yourself some grace to like make mistakes. I think the biggest thing is to learn from your mistakes, because like a lot of designers that I've hired throughout the years, or who's worked for me or has been on my team, you kind of have to fail to get better, or to, to be good. And so I think embracing failure and, learning from things like that, I think make you a stronger person, a stronger graphic designer. I think they make you a better, a better partner for your clients, because you have to see the other side of things to know what not to do. So I think I would say embracing failure, embracing your mistakes, and learning from them would be my biggest piece of advice. And also, I think, it's never too, I think there's a quote like, you're never too young, or you're never too old to do something new. And so I think just being open to, other creative pursuits, because even though I'm a graphic designer by day, I don't want to do that on the weekend or at night or anything like that. And so like last summer, I took a class online on multimedia collaging. So, just exercising your mind and keeping yourself inspired.
That's great advice for graphic design, but also for life in general. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure. Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us for the Maker Showcase today. We really liked having you on. Where can people find you if they have more questions about graphic design?
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is small caps italic, or I can share my website with you that you can give to them, or my email.
Yeah, we can pop up your website on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, there you have it. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.